Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Winter Code. Today we're going to be looking at how to spin up a local test net of a blockchain using a tool called Anvil. Now you might be wondering, why is this a necessary skill to have? Well, as I've started to work on more projects, I've realized that you need to be able to build smart contracts and test them. Now, if you try to do this using something like a traditional testnet, like Sepolia, for example, you have to go through quite a few different steps. You need to go and get testnet from a faucet. In order to do that, you usually have to have some amount of actual ETH in your wallet, which if you have a wallet that you use for development and testing, that might not be the case. So then you have to transfer funds between wallets, and then it's like, crap, it's mainnet, so that's a lot of money in transfer fees. It's just a mess. And as someone who's been a software engineer for a while, frankly, it's ridiculous to have to go through that much effort just to test something. So today we're going to be looking at Anvil, which is a tool by Foundry. Very useful. I happen to have an article on the subject as well. It's not paywalled, because I don't paywall my stuff, at least not yet. So you can scroll through it here. It's pretty much everything I'm going to cover in this video. I'll link to it below. If you want to see the actual code in depth, check out the article. But what Anvil lets us do is, by simply typing Anvil, I can spin up my own local blockchain. So this is an EVM compatible chain. It's not synced with mainnet, although I think you can do that. Right now I just have basically my own chain that just started like at the Genesis block. And you can see it's running locally on port 8545. So that means that I have an RPC endpoint that I can now ping and send like transactions and stuff to, which is pretty cool. In terms of testnet, because I was complaining a minute ago about how I don't like to have to get test funds, Anvil comes pre-seeded with like these 10 accounts, and they're private keys, and you can see each one has about 10k ETH in it. So that's going to be irrelevant in a second, because we're going to have to actually deploy something. So I've got my node running. I'm going to pop over to another terminal. I've already written some Python code for interacting with this, so I'm just going to real quick show you this connect to Anvil. This is super simple. It imports the Web3 library. It just points to my Anvil URL here, which is localhost 8545, and then it's going to try to connect using this Web3 function. And then, yeah, it's just going to print some output if it actually worked or not. So I'm going to run it. You can see I'm in a virtual env here as well for testing. Cool, we got connected to Anvil. So I've already deployed a smart contract, which is this one here, called Simple Storage. And this is just to show you more than just connecting to Anvil, how you can like deploy a contract and then interact with it using Python, because it's a very useful thing to be able to do. You can like set up a Flask API if you want to take requests from a front end and have them post to the chain. So this contract, all it does is it has a number, just an int called value, and then you can either retrieve that value or you can increment it. So you can do a read, but you can also send a transaction to increment it. The command that you do using Anvil and using Forge to deploy something to the chain is this forge create. So when you run this, it's going to compile your smart contract and then deploy it to your local blockchain. You specify the RPC URL, which is the port and address that your Anvil node is running on, which we have over here. Pass the contract file, as well as the contract from the file that you want to compile. Any CTOR args, I'm just going to initialize the value to 0. And then this last bit's important, because you'll get an error if you don't do this properly. You need to, since this is a transaction, creating a contract is something that alters blockchain state. You need to pay gas for it. And so you need an account that has some ETH in it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say unlocked and from, and we're going to pass it this address here, which is just one of these default accounts that's already seeded with ETH. So I'm going to run this. I already compiled this before when I was setting up this demo, that's why, but it did deploy it. There's the deployer, it's deployed to this address here, and it's got this transaction hash. So if we come back over here too, we can see like there's some logs in Anvil. If there was an error or something, this would give us information as to what went wrong. So I'm going to take this address, and I'm going to go into my interact with Anvil script. Just going to come here and paste the address of the deployed contract. Go ahead and save it. Okay, and we can see it's going to send a transaction and increment the value from 0 to 1. And all it's doing there is it's got the same connect logic from before. This contract API here, if you're familiar with APIs, this is just kind of like which public methods are supported and which values are supported by the contract. And then all I've done down here is just connect. This just does a call because it's a read operation to get the value. And then this increment value function will actually create a little transaction here to interact with that deployed smart contract and increment its value. That is all there is to it. As I said, I've got an article that covers all of this, but yeah, check it out because being able to set up a little chain like this and interact with it is super useful. Nice thing about Anvil is because you run it with just one command, like just literally Anvil, it's pretty easy to include in Docker files, to include in setup scripts. So if you're deploying something to like a virtual machine and you need to spin up a blockchain to test on or for your team to test on, this is a great way of doing it. You can modify things within the blockchain, like when it generates new blocks, what the default gas fees are, those kinds of things, like the base fee. So pretty customizable. Recommend checking it out. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.